But in 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta and Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. So in other words, kids who got them before 36 months and kids who got them afterward. The data from that study showed that Black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety scientist at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DeStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety branch, and ordered to destroy that data. And then they published it without that fact. So you know that story, I know that story, and you know of hundreds of stories like that. It happens all the time. We are being lied to by these agencies, and we're going to change that right now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Dana with the Data. Today, I'm going to talk about the CDC vaccine cover-up, what they don't want you to know. In 2002, the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention conducted an internal study that would shake the foundations of vaccine safety science. What they discovered was so alarming that senior officials allegedly ordered the destruction of critical data. This is that story. Today, we're going to examine one of the most controversial allegations in modern public health, a claim that the CDC deliberately covered up evidence leaking MMR vaccines to increase autism rates in Black American boys. Let me walk you through exactly what happened. In 2002, the CDC conducted an internal study in Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia. They examined children who received the MMR vaccine, that's measles, mumps, and rubella, and divided them into 2 groups. Group 1, children who received the vaccine on the recommended schedule before 36 months of age. Group 2, children who received the vaccine later after 36 months. The researchers wanted to understand if the timing of vaccination had any impact on autism diagnosis rates. What they found, according to whistleblower testimony, was deeply troubling. The data showed that Black boys who received the MMR vaccine on time before 36 months had a 260% greater chance of receiving an autism diagnosis compared to those who received it later. 260%. That's not a small statistical variation. That's a massive difference that demanded investigation. The chief scientist on this study was Dr. William Thompson, a senior vaccine safety scientist at the CDC. According to his later testimony, what happened next was unprecedented in his career. Dr. Thompson alleged that his boss, Frank DeStefano, who heads the CDC immunization safety branch, called him into a room with 4 other co-authors of the study. The order was simple but shocking. Destroy the data showing the increased autism risk in Black American boys. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about senior government scientists being ordered to eliminate evidence that could have protected vulnerable children. Evidence that parents had a right to know. Evidence that could have informed medical decisions for thousands of families. And after destroying this critical data, they published the study anyway without the findings that showed the increased risk. This isn't an isolated incident. This is part of a pattern that has been documented time and time again. We've seen studies manipulated, data suppressed, and scientists silenced when their findings don't align with predetermined conclusions about vaccine safety. The question we must ask ourselves is, how many of the studies have been altered? How many of the findings have been buried? How many families have been denied critical information about medical interventions for their children? When government agencies tasked with protecting public health instead choose to protect institutional interests, they portray the very people they're supposed to serve. Remember, do no harm. And communities that suffer the most are often those with least political power, like the Black American families whose children were disproportionately affected in this study. Let's be clear about what this means. We're not talking about being anti-vaccine. We're talking about being pro-transparency, pro-science, pro-informed consent. Parents deserve to know all risks and benefits of medical interventions for their children. They deserve honest data, not manipulated statistical design to support predetermined conclusions. The Black American community has a long and justified history of medical mistrust, stemming from horrific abuses like the Tuskegee experiments, where agencies like the CDC engaged in alleged cover-ups that specifically affect Black children. They perpetuate this mistrust and harm public health efforts. How can we expect communities to trust public health recommendations when the very agencies making those recommendations have allegedly hidden data that could affect their children's safety? Mind you, if you notice, I'm saying allegedly, because no one hasn't been taken to court. We are being lied to by these agencies. Change means demanding complete transparency and vaccine safety research. It means protecting whistleblowers who risk their careers and their lives to expose the truth. It means ensuring that no data is ever destroyed or suppressed because it's inconvenient. Change means acknowledging the vaccine safety science must be independent, rigorous, and free from institutional pressure to reach predetermined conclusions. And change means recognizing that informed consent isn't just a legal requirement, it's a moral imperative. Parents have the right to make medical decisions based on complete, honest information. The story of Dr. William Thompson and the suppressed CDC data is more than just one study. It's a symbol of everything that's wrong with how we approach vaccine safety in this country. We can do better. We must do better. The health and safety of our children, of all children, regardless of race or background, depends on our commitment to scientific integrity and transparency. No more cover-ups, no more destroyed data, no more lies. The time for change is now. Our children deserve nothing less than the truth. Demand transparency, protect our children. The truth matters. Now, I want to conclude with highlights from Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Senate committee hearing that was on September the 4th.
Let me start with the big picture. Under President Trump's leadership, we at HHS are enacting a once-in-a-generation shift from a sick care system to a true healthcare system that tackles the root causes of chronic disease. Chronic diseases reach crisis proportions in our country. And finally, we have an administration that is taking action. The MAHA report assessment, which the White House released in May, was the first government analysis of the key drivers of childhood chronic disease: ultra-processed foods, chemical exposures, physical inactivity, and over-medicalization. This month, we will follow with the MAHA report strategy, the Trump administration's solution for addressing each cause. At HHS, we haven't just been writing reports. We have been the busiest, most proactive administration in HHS history. In just half a year, we've taken on food dyes, baby formula contamination, the grass loophole, fluoride in our drinking water, gas station heroin, electronic cigarettes, drug prices, prior authorization, information blocking.
Committee will come to order. I apologize to you for that outburst, Secretary Kennedy. I would notify everyone else in the audience. Comments from the audience are inappropriate. If there are any further disruptions, the committee will recess until the police can restore order. Mr. Secretary, please proceed.
As I was saying, prior authorization, information blocking, and healthcare interoperability. We're ending gain-of-function research, child mutilation, and reducing animal testing. We are addressing cell phone use in schools, excessive screen time for youth, the lack of nutrition education in our medical schools, sickle cell anemia, hepatitis C, the East Palestine chemical spill, and many, many others. At FDA, we are now on track to approve more drugs this year than at any time in history. I'm also proud to say that HHS under President Trump is doing more with less. We have taken measures to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. Just by eliminating duplicative enrollments in CMS, we are saving taxpayers $14 billion a year. Meanwhile, we are expanding access for people who need it. We are ending racist diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and instead focusing on aiding low-income and vulnerable families, regardless of their race, which was the original intent of Title X. We're also pouring $1 billion into Head Start and the Administration for Children and Families. Compassion need not be the casualty of efficiency. I'd like to highlight some issues that have not gotten media attention. First, we are doing our part to fulfill the President's commitment to stop human trafficking, especially of children. We inherited a terrible humanitarian crisis from the previous administration with its open border policies, which allowed the appalling loss of 476,000 unaccompanied children. We have implemented policies now to ensure that that appalling tragedy can never happen again. We have knocked on 82,000 doors and located 22,000 of those children. I promise you that we will do more in the next 3 years. We are also addressing the disastrous health conditions in tribal communities on Native American reservations. I've met face-to-face with tribal leaders in dozens of communities and tribes in Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, New Mexico, and elsewhere. And I look forward to making HHS resources more available to those communities. One of the most significant initiatives under President Trump is the Rural Health Transformation Fund, part of the President's Big Beautiful Bill, which will provide the greatest investment of federal money into rural health care in history. Finally, I would like to address the recent shakeups at CDC. These changes were absolutely necessary adjustments to restore the agency to its role as the world's gold standard public health agency with the central mission of protecting Americans from infectious disease. CDC failed that responsibility miserably during COVID, when its disastrous and nonsensical policies destroyed small businesses, violated civil liberties, closed our schools, caused generational damage in doing so, massed infants with no science, and heightened economic inequality. And yet all those oppressive and unscientific interventions failed to do anything about the disease itself. America is home to 4.2% of the world's population, yet we had nearly 20% of the COVID deaths. We literally did worse than any country in the world. And the people at CDC who oversaw that process, who put masks on our children, who closed our schools, are the people who will be leaving. And that's why we need bold, competent, and creative new leadership at CDC. People able and willing to chart a new course. As my father once said, progress is a nice word, but change is its motivator, and change has its enemies. That's why we need new blood at CDC. That's also why it's imperative that we remove officials with conflicts of interest and catastrophically bad judgment and political agendas. We need unbiased, politics-free, transparent, evidence-based science in the public interest. Those are the guiding principles behind the changes at the CDC, and that is what you can expect all across our agency for the next 3 years. Right now, we spend about 6% of Medicaid funding is sent to rural hospitals, a very, very tiny slice, and that's one of the reasons they're in trouble. President Trump has now allocated through the One Big Beautiful Bill $50 billion, so $10 billion a year over the next 5 years. What we give to rural hospitals, that 6% represents $19 billion a year. So we're increasing that by $10 billion. So we're infusing more than 50% increase in the amount of money that is going to rural communities over the next 5 years. There's never been anything like that in history. It is the biggest investment, and it should stem this hemorrhage.
To change the healthcare system's focus from a reactive symptom management model to one that focuses on lifestyle choices and the root causes of chronic disease?
Yes, Senator, you know, this morning I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. 1950, it was 3%. Today, it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause, it's increasing, and all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or with the various ways to allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
And I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
American Academy of Pediatrics, you think they're lying too?
I think the American Academy of Pediatrics is gravely conflicted. They get their biggest contributors are the 4 largest vaccine makers. They run a journal, Pediatrics, which they make a lot of money on, that is completely dependent on pharmaceutical companies. So I wouldn't put a big stake in what they say that benefits pharmaceutical interests. Senator, I didn't politicize ACIP, I depoliticized it. The Congress has been
Incredible sacrifice for enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I got a reply? Or, Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end. The evidence is transparent.
Will you make it in advance transparent for the American people so they can comment on it?
All the evidence is transparent for the first time in history, and you were never there complaining when the pharmaceutical companies were picking those people and then running their products through with no safety testing.
So I want to highlight Anna Matson. She is the one that put this thread together of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Senate committee hearing on September the 4th, because he is Secretary of Health and Human Services. So go follow Anna Matson. That's at Anna R. Matson on X.
Should they have access to good science about healthy food?
Absolutely.
Well, then how is that going to happen with the Medicaid cuts that are taking place?
There are no cuts to Medicaid.
Sir, that is an absurd. There is not a single, some of my Republican colleagues, but there is not a single study that does not, and I can tell you, I was in Franklin, Virginia a couple days ago. The rural hospital is going to close.
Evidence is clear and supports what President Trump has said. The vaccine works, and it has saved millions of lives. Your own process, on the other hand, has not been transparent. You repeatedly choose to ignore data because it doesn't match your preconceived notions and lies. So you have said that the vaccine did save lives. You've said it was a monumental achievement. And given that, if you agree with President Trump that the vaccine saved millions of lives, why have you acted behind closed doors to overrule scientists and limit the freedom of parents to choose the COVID vaccine for their children? Why have you done that?
For the COVID vaccine, I was removed by FDA because they were the industry.
No, it was behind closed doors, and scientists who said they wanted to brief you on the science, scientists who wanted to understand why the FDA, why you unilateral parameters for giving vaccines, making it possible now, to Senator Cassidy's colleagues' points, that they're going to have to go off-label
This is crazy talk.
to prescribe a vaccine for children. I'm not making things up. Do you know how the FDA approval process works and what
Yeah, I
happens
do.
when it's,
I know exactly.
what an off-label, do you know what an off-label
I
prescription
know
is?
exactly how it works. I know exactly how it works.
So why behind closed doors?
It's not
did
behind
you-
closed doors. The industry makes the studies, and they could not provide a study that said that it is effective for healthy kids.
So when have you produced the data that you relied on and that this FDA relied on to change those parameters? You did it behind
That
closed
data-
doors.
no, the
and
data's
now
all
parents-
public.
Now parents who decide that they do want their children to have I'm not
You're
making
just
stuff.
making stuff up.
You know, sometimes when you make an accusation, it's kind of a confession, Mr. Kennedy. So
But in 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta and Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. So in other words, kids who got them before 36 months and kids who got them afterward. The data from that study showed that black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety scientist at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DiStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety branch, and ordered to destroy that data. And then they published it without that fact. So you know that story, I know that story, and you know of hundreds of stories like that. It happens all the time. We are being lied to by these agencies, and we're going to change that right now.
I wanted to highlight that part right there because this is what this video is about. And as a mother, I vaccinated both of my children and I followed the vaccination timetable. My parents did it with me and my brother. So I don't blame parents. I'm not going to blame myself for doing something that I thought was being responsible. And I also thought that, well, if there's some type of issue or if there's a possibility of an adverse effect that can happen to my child, my pediatrician doctor will inform me. That's not the case. Because at the top, when we're talking about these scientists at CDC, NIH, and so forth, they dictate to the doctors what is good and what is not. what to administrate to the patients and what not to. Parents have the right to know. They should have all of the information, the pros and cons, accessible to them.
Your CMS director, Mr. Oz, he said, as we discussed in your office, we must re-examine how end-of-life care is addressed in this country. I'm offering Rhode Island as an example of how to make it better. I hope you will concede that right now it is not good. So
Senator,
I
everything
need
you
you to respond to me. You guys know where to find me. I'm up in the Hart Building.
yeah.
We've reached out, we've tried for meetings, and the progress in all three of those areas, fixing the payment gap, getting ahead balanced regionally, and following through on our desire to do good things, improving end-of-life care with waivers you guys have already granted, has gotten me so far no place. And forgive my impatience, a lot of it predates you. I put a hold on Biden nominees because I was getting jerked around by your bureaucracy. I'd like it to end and get some progress.
Yeah, you know, Senator, you raised this during my confirmation hearing, and I said to you then, and you were very civil. You raised something that makes a lot of sense to the extent that we have the power to fix it at CMS. I'd like to do it. We've had the same kind of complaints from Vermont. But I said to you at that time, call me and let's come talk about this. You have my cell phone. You can call me anytime. I've never heard from you in 7 months. Call me up. I'd love to meet with you. I'll get Oz in the meeting, and what you're saying, particularly about at the end of life, it may be something we can do something about. I want to help, and let me know.
Months of age are eligible to get a COVID booster at their local pharmacy today.
Anybody can get the booster.
I'm sorry?
Anybody can get it, Senator.
Anybody. So you're saying that is now the official rule of HHS. Anybody is eligible to get a booster by just walking into the pharmacy.
It's not recommended for healthy people.
No. If you don't recommend, then the consequence of that in many states is that you can't walk into a pharmacy and get one. It means insurance companies don't have to cover the $200 or so cost. As Senator Dr. Cassidy said, you are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
And that is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
Well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is, everyone who wants it, that was your promise.
No, I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that? Because you are the one who said you would not take them away. Now, Senator...
I'm not taking them away from anybody.
Secretary...
You want me to indicate a product for which there is no clinical data?
Senator,
is that what you want?
Secretary Kennedy, you said you wouldn't, and now you did.
I'm not taking them away. Everybody can get access to them.
No, they can't walk into a pharmacy the way they could last month and get access.
It depends on the state. It depends on the states.
A year ago,
but they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on. You clearly are taking away vaccines. I've seen the list for what's coming up next, and that is the agenda for the next CDC vaccine panel. And first up is ratifying your COVID actions. Second is hepatitis B is on the agenda. So should Americans expect you to take away hepatitis vaccine access as well, even though you promised not to?
As I said, I'm not taking vaccines away from anybody.
Okay, same answer, right? You're just going to deny that when people can't get access, that you're not taking it away. Then let me ask you, is that the same game you're going to play with measles,
you want me to recommend every product in the world so that without any clinical trial data, you still get the COVID vaccines and Medicare will still pay for them and Medicaid will still pay for them.
Tell the head of the CDC that if she refused to sign off on your changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, that she had to resign?
No, I told her that she had to resign because I asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said no. So if you had an employee who told you they weren't trustworthy, would you ask them to resign, Senator?
So I'm sorry, but this is not what she has said publicly. She has said
I'm not surprised about that.
So you're saying she's lying?
Yes. Every conversation I had with her, there were witnesses, different, Senator, between established science and the scientific establishment, which has been co-opted by the pharmaceutical industry.
So you're telling the American people that the American Medical Association, representing hundreds of thousands of people, have been co-opted and that they should not trust their doctors.
And I'm
the American Academy of Pediatrics, and by the way, just for the record, every single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman, has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food
Everybody
industry.
but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were already president, you got a billionaire behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican got corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt, but you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The issue is every time anyone disagrees with you...
Are you saying the pharmaceutical industry was supporting my presidential campaign?
I'm saying,
I don't think so.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the pharmaceutical industry is a greedy institution which is charging us the highest prices in the world. They are pervasive. But to suggest that every institution, the AMA, the pediatrics people, is corrupt because they disagree with you is an insult to the American people.
Listen, people disagree with me all the time. I have arguments in my agency, heated arguments every day with Jay Bhattacharya, with Marty McCary, with Dr. Oz.
You have given the names of a few people. I have given you the names of organizations representing hundreds of thousands of doctors and scientists. I yield, Mr.
You were before Congress, Secretary Kennedy, you claimed, and I quote, "I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public to avoid a vaccination." But in a podcast, you said the opposite. You said there's no vaccine that is safe and effective. So that sure sounds anti-vax to me, Secretary Kennedy. So let me ask you, when were you lying, sir? When you told this committee that you were not anti-vax, or when you told Americans that there's no safe and effective vaccine?
Both things are true.
Oh, so more denial, more back and forth. I mean, here's what I know. Here's what I know.
Want me to explain why, Senator? You just
No, actually, I want you to listen to me.
Okay, go ahead.
You were before Congress, Secretary Kennedy.
As you know, autism affects millions of children, so I guess you'd have the nation's top medical experts working on this. Mr. Kennedy, you hired a man named David Geyer to conduct this study. Is that correct?
No.
Is Mr. David Geyer working for HHS?
He's a contractor, but he's not conducting a study.
He's a contractor?
He's a contractor.
Do you know who works for you, Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah.
Do you know that Mr. Geyer is listed as a HHS on the employee directory as a senior data analyst, not a contractor?
He's a contractor. He's not an SGE.
So is your website wrong?
He's not an SGE. I don't know what the...
I'm going to pull up the website for you.
He's a contractor.
If the website says he is a senior data analyst, will you at least admit to the committee
Well, I don't know if
wrong?
a contractor can be classified as a senior data analyst or not.
Is Mr. Geyer a doctor?
No.
Did you know he never went to medical school?
He's not practicing medicine.
Did you know that he got caught in Maryland and was charged for practicing medicine without a medical license?
He was charged by a medical board, he sued the medical board, and the medical board was found to have acted in actual malice and was fined $2.6 million by a judge in Maryland for doing that.
See, so you choose to know a lot when you want to know a lot. It's incredible, Mr. Kennedy.
Senator, you're
It's incredible.
ridiculous.
So here's the question I have. You brought him in to do this study. I think there's no question about
I told you he's not doing a study.
Is he participating in the study?
No. What
Is he
he's
doing
doing
any analysis in regards to this study?
No, what he's doing is getting access to the Vaccine Safety Data Link, which is the biggest repository for vaccine information that your friend would not give us for 7 months. For
Mr.
7 months.
Secretary, let me ask you this question, just so because you know the answer. What is Mr. Geyer doing?
He is the only one, because Congress ordered CDC to open up the VSD to him in 2002. He's the only outsider who's ever seen it. So because CDC will not give us, they have
Mr. Secretary, is he participating in this then?
No, he is.
But you just said he's the only dude that knows what's going on here.
Do you want me to explain it to you, Senator, or do you
No, because
just
you're
want to
confusing me.
show?
You said,
Do you just want to showboat?
I'll submit
You
this.
just want to showboat for your ads, or do you want to hear a real answer to your question?
Mr. Secretary, you choose to know answers to questions with some colleagues. And with others
I'm
you
willing to
pretend not
give you the
know.
answer. I'm
Maybe
willing to
someone-
give you the
Mr.
answer.
Secretary, someone should have asked you, maybe President Trump should have asked you, are you a trustworthy person? And we should have waited for an answer then. Let's move on.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Mr.
You're talking gibberish.
Mr. Secretary, let me speak slowly and clearly so that you can understand me through my New Mexico accent.
And then give me a chance to
Does
answer.
this help? Can you understand me?
You talk about transparency. I think part of that is sharing what you know, what the CDC knows with parents so that they can make decisions. Behind me, yeah, I know it's going to be hard to see from there. I can barely read it. This is the current CDC recommendations for vaccines for children. On day number 1, they get their first jab, a hepatitis vaccine. By the time they're 18 months, they've had 18 jabs. By the time they get to be able to vote, they have 76 jabs. Now, when I listen, what I hear you say is that, look, vaccines are drugs. We need a measured response and a measured, when do we use this? It's interesting that the United States has put age 65 and older for COVID vaccine. UK has chosen 75 and France 80. Obviously, scientists disagree exactly when that should or shouldn't be. Hepatitis B vaccine, it makes no sense to me. I've only delivered 5,000 babies, but we do a hepatitis test on every mom. By the time she delivers that baby, I know her pretty well. And if she doesn't have any risk factors, if she's not an IV drug abuser, if she's in a stable monogamous relationship, nobody at home has hepatitis, I don't see the benefit myself in that hepatitis vaccine. Everyone's eligible for it, everyone can get it, and my pediatricians always agree with me. And no, I'm not saying if you don't know the hepatitis status of that patient, they shouldn't get it. I'm not saying if this person's had no prenatal care, that puts them at risk for hepatitis. Can you just speak a little bit, when you talk about transparency, and trying to empower and make vaccines available, these should be treated just like a medication.
Yeah, I mean, I say I'm not anti-vaccine. Saying I'm anti-vaccine is like saying I'm anti-medicine. Well, I'm pro-medicine, but I understand some medicines harm people. Some of them have risks. Some of them have benefits that outweigh those risks for certain populations, and the same is true with vaccines. And we don't understand the risk profile because vaccines are the only medical intervention, medical device, or pharmaceutical drug that are exempt from pre-licensing safety studies. And so there are 2 hepatitis vaccines, and one of them had a safety study that lasted for 4 days on 143 kids for a product that's going to be given to 76 million kids. Yeah. The risk profile prior to the introduction of the vaccine, the risk of a baby dying from hepatitis B was 1 in 7 million. That means you need to give 7 million hepatitis B vaccines to prevent one death if you're going to give 7 million.
So, Mr. Secretary, and I guess before the press labels me wrong, I'm not anti-vax either. I think MMR's been a great vaccine. The DPT's been a great vaccine. Polio's been a great vaccine. Smallpox. So there are great, but it's the measured approach that we're after, the transparency. You're trying to empower parents here. What I feel the difference is, sometimes my friends across the aisle feel like there's a one-size-fits-all, that they should be telling parents what to do. And what you and I are fighting for is we want to empower parents to make these decisions. I want to talk about decisions. I want to talk about morbidity and mortality of COVID for just a second. It is so true that two things can be true, and I don't understand why, just the rabbit hole some of my colleagues are going down. There's a big difference. When I was out there practicing, doing volunteer work, I was so confused myself on the numbers. People dying with COVID versus from COVID. And we still don't have that message, and I think that's what I hear you saying as well. How many people died from COVID versus with COVID is a different answer. The situation today is so different when this monster virus was made at a laboratory in Wuhan, China, and none of us had ever seen this virus, and we had no immunity to it. But today, every American's had COVID a dozen times probably, and we built up immunity. And I think that's why that both things are true. It was a miracle. Warp speed was a miracle, what President Trump and his team did, and it saved millions of lives most likely. But it's also true that it probably killed some people. Like most vaccines do, there is a death rate associated. So both things are true. Anything else you want to clear up on the morbidity, mortality of COVID and COVID vaccines?
Well, I think you just cleared it up. The COVID vaccine was critical. President Trump's leadership got it to us when our society was locked down. It allowed us to open up. It was, as I said, perfectly matched to a virus that was new in the experience of humanity. And so it was a miracle. Right now, we're dealing with completely different circumstances, where the virus has mutated, where it's much less dangerous, where there's a lot of natural immunity and herd immunity. And so the calculus is different, and it's complicated. And, if you just want to turn everything into a soundbite, it makes it, you can't have a grown-up conversation. But, there were more reports to VAERS, which is the only surveillance system that we have, of injuries and deaths from that vaccine that all vaccines put together in history. So we have to acknowledge that there was a cause. We acknowledge that there was a benefit. We can't quantify either one because of the data chaos at CDC, and that's all I'm saying. And they think I'm being evasive because I won't make a kind of a statement that's almost religious in nature. Did it save 1 million lives? Well, there's no data to support that. Or maybe data, there's no study, there's modeling studies, there's faulty data. I'm not going to sign on to something if I can't do it to a scientific certainty. It doesn't mean that I'm, anti-vax. It just means I'm pro-science.
Thank you.
Dana with the data. Dana with the data.